and welcome to the Roy Rogers News Channel. Thank you so much for watching. And for today's fun-filled ability, well, we're going to be discussing an ability that might help you out in your story mode run. And with me to discuss this ability is a Manic you can trust. Manic Mina, which I say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Perfect. All right. And without further ado, let's go ahead and discuss the competitive ability. Manic Mina, are you ready to discuss this ability?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, and without further ado, let's go ahead and discuss competitive right now. So you might be asking us, hey Roy and Manic, what is competitive? And that's a good question. If one of the Pokemon stats is lowered by the opponent, then the Pokemon special attack stat is boosted by 2 stages. So think of it this way. If you have your Pokemon there, and let's just say that your opponent has a Gyarados, and the Gyarados there uses Intimidate, and then all of a sudden your Pokemon's attack stat goes down by -1, well then competitive kicks in and your special attack goes up by +2. So in other words, your Pokemon gets stronger when a stat is lowered. So that is awesome. Manic Mina, what do you have to say about competitive?
I think it's a really great ability because even though some of your stats are, you might get a stat that is lowered, you're going to shoot back up and win the competition.
That's awesome. And that's really good, especially in a story mode run when everything moves pretty quickly. So, yeah, competitive is a really nice ability. And without further ado, Manic Mina, are you ready to discuss the Pokemon with me?
I am.
Perfect. All right, and I'm going to give the usual prerequisite by saying the following. I don't plan on discussing the pre-evolutions because I don't want this video to take a long time. I'm going to be discussing the maximum evolutions. So feel free to check that out, although I am going to be discussing the evolutionary chain, so that way you know what level to level up the Pokemon, or you know what item to use. So, for example, Jigglypuff, you could evolve it into Wigglytuff if you use a Moonstone, which is really nice, because that means you can be able to get Wigglytuff in your story mode, considering the fact that the max obedience for all regions, as the time of this taping, is level 20, so you can be able to use Wigglytuff at the start of your region exploration. Manic Mina, are you ready to discuss competitive Pokemon right now? Perfect. And without further ado, let's go ahead and discuss Wigglytuff, a recurring star from the Frisk series. Alright, and the PokeMMO developers have gifted this Pokemon with a brand new ability. So on top of the PokeMMO developers giving Wigglytuff beef and covet, thank you so much to the PokeMMO developers, you made Wigglytuff really good. So the Frisk video is a little bit outdated when it comes down to Wigglytuff. Still terrible to use, but much better when it comes down to Frisk. But now let's go and discuss competitive. What are the main perks for Wigglytuff? And that's a good question. Wigglytuff is a huge bag of moves. By golly, no wonder why it's so big and fluffy. Inside that fluff is a bunch of moves. You have Calm Mind, you have Dark Pulse, Energy Ball, Flamethrower, Focus Blast, Hyper Voice, Ice Beam, Nasty Plot, so you can boost your special attack just in case you're getting a little bit impatient by Pokemon trying to lower down your stats. You could just say, oh no, I'm just going to use Nasty Plot and I'm just going to boost my special attack on my own. You can use Psychic, Psyshock, which is good for things like Blissey. You can use the Shadow Ball, Thunderbolt, Tri-Attack, Wish, which is an egg move from Togetic or Togekiss, Hidden Power, in case you need more coverage, Fake Tears, which lowers down the special defense of your opponent, and Heal Bell, and you also have Sing as well. Sing is a bit inaccurate, I can get to that later, but you have quite a lunch bag of moves, by golly, wow. So Wigglytuff is really good in that department. Another main perk is this. When you have a special attack stat of 85, and on top of that you have an HP stat of 140, you can take quite a bit of some abuse. And not only can you take quite a fair amount of abuse, but you can also be able to dish out the pain against certain Pokemon. So Wigglytuff is really good, really underrated, and now I'm going to go ahead and discuss some of its drawbacks. So I'm going to start by saying this. In a fast-going story mode, you know, when you have a speed stat of 45, that doesn't really reflect speed. It reflects more of slowness. Well then again, Wigglytuff is kind of a fluffy pillow type Pokemon, so... But at the same time, that speed stat might be a deal breaker in certain battles. So just be careful of its speed stat. Another main drawback is this. Wigglytuff has a defense stat of 45 and a special defense stat of 50, so don't go out there and take too much hits. I mean, that 140 HP stat certainly makes up for a fair amount of fights. I would also like to highlight Sing's accuracy at 55%. I mean, by golly, if you want to catch wild Pokemon with your Wigglytuff, don't do it, because Sing has a very low accuracy, and you might find yourself a lot more disappointed using the move, rather than just using another Pokemon to catch wild Pokemon in your journey. Manic Mina, do you have any responses to say about our lovely, fluffy pillow friend?
I think Wigglytuff is a fine addition to the team, but it is more of a support mon for maybe double battles. I think that's where it would hold best. It does have, like you said, a very high attack, but its defenses are pretty low, as well as its speed. But on the plus side, I think as a sidekick Pokemon for double battles, it would make a great addition to the team.
And when you say attack, you mean special attack, right?
Yes.
I know some viewers are going to write in and ask about that, so I just want to make sure. So special attack is really good. Don't even bother using its attack stat. Yes, it has access Drain Punch, but don't bother using it because there are much better attackers out there. And competitive is special attack, and this video is prioritizing special attacks, so that's where we're going to be. Perfect. All right, I have one more perk for Wigglytuff, and that perk goes something like this. Jigglypuff can evolve into Wigglytuff via Moonstone, so that is going to mean that you can get Wigglytuff straight from the get-go, so that's really awesome. And Igglypuff evolves into Wigglytuff via Happiness. That might be a little bit of some work, so that's going to be a con. But besides that, I mean, Wigglytuff is a really good Pokemon. And also, the egg group might be a bit expensive because not a lot of people hunt for Fairy-type egg group. So, just keep that in mind. And without further ado, Manic Mina, are you ready to discuss the next Pokemon?
I am.
Perfect. Alright, let's go and discuss our beautiful fish Pokemon, also known as Milotic. And you might be asking me, hey Roy, Milotic, why is Milotic on this list? That's a good question, because the Pokemon developers have gifted Milotic with this competitive ability, meaning that Milotic can be able to have its special attack get increased. Now, you might be asking, hey, Roy and Mina, what are the perks for Milotic? And that's a good question. Let's go and discuss Milotic right now. One of the perks for Milotic is this. Milotic has a really nice egg group. It is Water A and Dragon, and the reason why that's so good, because Water A is pretty cheap to make breeders for, so you can keep that in mind while you make your Milotic. Look at that special attack stat. It is base 100. It is really high. And also, the speed stat is not too bad, base 81, especially for the story mode. So you go to outspeed a fair amount of Pokemon, which is really cool. And also, Milotic has a fair amount of moves. You have Surf, Scald, Dragon Pulse, Hidden Power, Ice Beam, Mirror Coat, which is the egg move from Corsola, and you got Recover. So that's really cool. And also, you have access to Hypnosis via Tutor move. Those are the main benefits for Milotic. Let's go and discuss some of its drawbacks. Let's go start off with the fact that Milotic really does lack a fair amount of coverage. And what do I mean by that? Well, yeah, I can use Hidden Power to kind of patch that, but at the same time, I wish Milotic can have more options, just like Wigglytuff. You know, Wigglytuff has Calm Mind, it has Nasty Plot. Speaking about that, Milotic doesn't have any way to boost its special attack, besides its competitive ability, but still, it doesn't have any way to boost its special attack, and that's really sad, because Milotic has a lot of potential, but the problem is its shallow moveset. I mean, it's kind of ironic. Milotic is supposed to be a fish under the deep blue sea, but yet its moveset is not very deep, it's actually quite shallow. I mean, I think Milotic belongs in a kiddie pool, to be honest with you. Manic Mina, do you have any commentary to say about our beautiful fish?
The only thing I have to add is that along with its other stats, I know our focus is special attack, but Milotic is absolutely gorgeous whenever you look at overall stats. It has 3 very high stats, being HP, its special attack, like you said, but also its special defense is really high up there at a base of 125. So this glow up Pokemon going from its not so pretty fish form into its prettier form definitely gets a boost in stats.
And look, I love Milotic's base stats. I just wish it had the moveset to back it up. I wish that Milotic can be thrown in the deep pool rather than the kiddie pool. Its moveset belongs in the kiddie pool, doesn't it?
It really does. I definitely agree. But just like Wigglytuff, this Pokemon would make an excellent addition to a team whenever you have it as a support mon.
I can agree with that. And also, it would be remiss if I did not mention this other drawback. it's going to take quite a bit for you to evolve. Oh yeah, did I mention the fact that Blue Pokeblock Plus you can only access in Hoenn in Lily Cove City, and implying that you might be starting in a region and such, and you say, I would love to use Milotic, but I don't have access to Hoenn. I don't have access to Lily Cove. Well then, you're at the mercy of people in the global trade link, which might overprice that Blue Pokeblock Plus. You might want to keep that in mind before you make a Milotic, because the evolution, you have to use 11 Blue Pokeblock Plus in order to get to a stage where you can be able to evolve the Feebas into Milotic. So, Manic Mina, what's your advice for people that would love to use Milotic in their story mode?
The best advice I could think of is you might be stuck with the ugly fish for a little bit unless you start in Hoenn. I think if you want to start with Feebas in your party, your best bet would be to start in Hoenn. That way you will have access to the blocks, as they are a bit overpriced on the GTL generally.
I do have to say this. I think that Milotic is a beautiful fish, and it's really good competitively. Just use its Marvel scale ability if you're going to be using it in PvP. Don't use its competitive ability. Use its competitive ability in the story mode.
One thing I'd like to add, that later on in game, Milotic also makes a fantastic cute charmer, just like Wigglytuff. That is something that both of them have in common, that they do have the cute charm ability. So for story mode, those are some great options for that.
One thing I would like to note, if you do want Cute Charm on the Milotic, that is a hidden ability, so you're going to have to use those Prismatic Pearls, or you're going to have to breed an Alpha Milotic or something like that, so you could be able to get that hidden ability Cute Charm if you want to use it in that capacity.
Very true.
So, Manic Mina, are you ready to discuss the next Pokemon, which actually gets competitive via hidden ability?
I am.
Let's go and discuss this penguin from Antarctica, also known as Empoleon, which, by the way, fun fact, Empoleon, the basis of the Pokemon, was based upon Napoleon Bonaparte, who is a general from France. So, there you go, little history lesson there. What are the main perks for Empoleon? That's a good question. Well, just like its general counterpart, Empoleon has a really good stat layout. By golly. I mean, Napoleon had quite a bit of an army. I mean, he fought a lot in wars back in the day. And Empoleon has a really good stat roll as well. Empoleon has HP stat of 84, its defense stat is 88, its special defense is 101, not as good as Milotic, but certainly very good. And then its special attack, 111! That's a lot higher than Milotic, so that's really cool. And also its speed stat is 60. Okay, it's fast enough to do certain story mode settings, but I would say this, maybe a little bit underwhelming, but hey, it's really good for the role that it plays. So Empoleon has that benefit going for it. Another main benefit for Empoleon is this. Its moveset is not too shallow. It has Flash Cannon, it has Surf, it has Scald, it has Grass Knot, which is good against heavy targets, and also it's good against things like Quagsire and Whiscash and the like. And you also have Hidden Power for type coverage, you have Ice Beam, you have Metal Sound, which can help lower down your opponent's special defense stats, so that's really cool. You also have Vacuum Wave, which is a priority move. You have Signal Beam, and you have Yawn by an egg move. Oh yeah, did I mention the fact that Empoleon is a field and water A egg group, so that's really cool. And also, you'll be able to have Roost via TM, so you could be able to recover your HP, which is really nice. I would also like to note another benefit as well. Piplup evolves into Prinlup at level 16, and the reason why that's so good is because in all the story modes, at the time of this taping, the maximal obedience level at the very start is level 20. So you can be able to get the second evolution already at level 16. So Piplup evolves into Prinlup at level 16. And then when you evolve Prinlup into Empoleon at level 36, by that time, it's probably still at the beginning of most story modes. So you can still be able to take advantage of Empoleon's perks there. I would like to say this as well. On top of Empoleon having a really nice base stat of 111 for its special attack, Empoleon also has a great typing. I mean, water and steel. You are immune to being poisoned, so your opponent cannot poison you, which is really good for longevity. And also, at the same time, Empoleon can take a fair amount of abuse. I mean, Steel Tech is really good because you can resist a fair amount of types. Manic Mina, do you have any response to say about our lovely penguin?
Nope. All I was going to add is back onto the types that you were mentioning. There's only 3 types that are special effective against Empoleon, and it looks like almost every single other type just isn't really effective at all. So that is absolutely an amazing build for a Pokemon that you can get as a starter, because Piplup, which you can find in the Diamond and Pearl Gen 4, evolves into Empoleon. So having a starter that you can get that is that magnificent is definitely a bonus.
Certainly, I agree with that, but there is a bit of a con now. And you know what it is? It's the fact that competitive is a hidden ability, so that means that you're either going to need a Prismatic Pearl for that starter, or you're going to have to get a water ability patch via the global trade link, and you're going to have to change Empoleon's ability to where it can be able to get that competitive ability. But besides that one con, I am going to say this: good things can be caged with a bit of an expensive tool. But you know what? Once you use that expensive tool, then you could be able to have access to a wonderful penguin that could be able to be by your side, which is really cool. Another main drawback is this: Empoleon is a water steel type. Okay, when you use a water type move against the rock and ground types in the story mode, you know, there are a fair amount of rock and ground types that have the ability Sturdy and then can retaliate with Earthquake. Empoleon is probably not going to appreciate too many Earthquakes, too many ground moves going in its direction. So that's something that you should keep in mind. So, Manic, do you have any response to say about that?
No, those are all true facts. I think for the ability issue, though, if you do start in another region and you kind of get your footing for the game, and then you start on the 4th gen as your next region, that would definitely help with being able to go ahead and get that hidden ability right out of the bat.
I agree with that. And without further ado, Manic, are you ready to discuss the last Pokemon here?
I am.
Alright, let's go ahead and dive into a certain Gothic Pokemon. And what is it? It is Gothitelle. Alright, there we go. I remember a lot of kids back in my high school that were into Goth. There we go. I'm sure this Pokemon spoke to them really well. What are the main perks for Gothitelle? That's a good question. Well, Gothitelle, just like Wigglytuff, has access to a fair amount of moves. It has access to Dark Pulse, Energy Ball, Focus Blast, Hidden Power, Nasty Plot, which is good because you boost your special attack by +2, Calm Mind, Psychic, Psyshock, which is good for things like Blissey, Shadow Ball, Thunderbolt, Signal Beam, Mirror Coat, which is an egg move from Lopunny, which Lopunny can wear Mirror Coat from the start, so you're going to have to get those heart scales ready, Heal Bell, and it has access to Hypnosis. So Gothitelle has quite a bag of moves, by golly. Another main perk for Gothitelle is this: considering that Gothitelle has a base 110 special defense, and it also has a base 95 defense stat and a base 70 AP stat, it can take a fair amount of abuse. Also, another thing to note is that its special attack is 95. Yes, it's not as good as Empoleon's 111, but hey, I'm not complaining considering the fact that A, competitive is not a hidden ability for Gothitelle, and B, its speed stat is a lot faster than Empoleon at base 65. That's really cool, but I do want to mention this drawback then. Considering the fact that Gothitelle's Psychic type, and it doesn't have a Steel type, that means that Gothitelle is vulnerable to being poisoned. So that's something you should keep in mind. Another main con is this: its humanoid egg group is going to be quite expensive to breed for, so just keep that in mind when you make the Gothitelle. You're going to have to budget around breeding for that specific Pokemon. And Manic, do you have any responses to say about our Gothic friend here?
Though the egg group might be expensive, Gothitelle does have a 75% chance of being female, so you are going to save some money that way whenever you're breeding them.
That's good. Now, I know that some people are probably in a financial situation where they have to roll the dice, but typically I advise against rolling the dice. I like to spend a little bit in terms of picking the gender so I can ensure that I get the female all the time, or I ensure I get the male all the time. But for anybody that is on a budget, then you can consider what Manic is saying here. That's something that's really good. Thank you so much, Manic for saying that.
Absolutely. And since it is a higher chance of it being female, if you do decide to select the gender, you're going to be able to pay less to select female since it is the higher rating. You won't have that outrageous charge like with Eevees to select female.
Certainly. I think we discussed a fair amount of Gothitelle's main drawbacks here. Also, I would like to mention something else. Gothitelle evolves into Gothorita at level 32. And Gothorita evolves into Gothitelle at level 41. What's the problem here? The problem is very simple. Level 41 is near the end of the story mode, or at least a little bit beyond the halfway point in a fair amount of story runs. So that's going to be a problem. You can get Gothitelle near the end of the story mode, so maybe Gothitelle might not be the Pokemon you really want, right? Because you want a Pokemon that you can be able to have access to quickly. Wigglytuff and Milotic can do that really well. Gothitelle can't. Empoleon can at least do that really well, considering the fact that its evolution stage is at level 36 and it's not beyond halfway point in most story mode runs. But hey, I am not complaining with Gothitelle. Gothitelle has a fair amount of wonderful perks, so Mina, do you have any commentary to say about our Goth brand before we go into our rankings?
As much as I love the Goth aesthetic, there's also the issue of catching this Pokemon, because it does look like they only appear in Unova. So if this is a Pokemon that you would like to catch, you're going to have to be in Unova in order to get it.
Certainly, and not only that, but also you're going to have to get up to Route 5 in Unova. So that's east of Nimbasa City, where you could be able to catch Gothorita, and then you have to breed that female Gothorita to make sure it's optimal for your story mode run. So just keep that in mind, that you might need to go a little bit ways away in order to get a Gothorita. But now, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into our rankings, shall we? So, Mina, are you ready to discuss the rankings?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Let's go ahead and dive into them right now. So the number one Pokemon I have to advise for the story mode is Wigglytuff. Because Wigglytuff not only has competitive with one of its normal abilities, but also you have access to quite an array of moves. By golly, you have access to Calm Mind, Dark Pulse, and Energy Ball, Flamethrower, etc. And you can be able to mold that Wigglytuff however you want to mold it. So that's really good. Yes, the speed stat is base 45. With an ability like competitive, that certainly patches up Wigglytuff's main sore points. That's really good. And with great power comes great responsibility. And yes, that speed stat is base 45. But you know what? Even at base 45, I mean, by golly, having that excellent bag of moves is something that I cannot praise more. I mean, by golly, Wigglytuff, you can mold it however you want to mold it. That's really good. The number 2 ranking, I have to say, is Gothitelle. Because Gothitelle, just like Wigglytuff to a lesser extent, also has a diversified moveset as well. You have Dark Pulse and Energy Ball, etc. And you can be able to mold that Gothitelle however you want to mold it. Not as much as Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff does have Flamethrower, Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, and those sort of moves. Gothitelle does have Thunderbolt, but it doesn't have Ice Beam and it doesn't have Flamethrower. But hey, Gothitelle also has a diversified moveset as well. You can be able to make that Gothitelle however you want to make it. So that's the number 2 ranking. As for number 3, what's the number 3 ranking? And that number 3 ranking has to go to Empoleon. Yes, competitive is a hidden ability, but you have access to Flash Cannon, you have access to Surf or Scald, which are stab, you have access to Grass Knot, which is good for heavy targets, and also it's good against water and ground types, so that's really good. You have access to Ice Beam, which is good against dragons. You have access to Vacuum Wave, which is a priority move, so in case you want to knock out a Pokemon, you can on the way out. And also, you can be able to have access to Signal Beams, so in case you're encountering a bunch of Psychic-type trainers, you can be able to have an answer for them too. You have access to Yawn by an Egg move, and hey, you're also part Field, so you can be able to breed Empoleon really easily. And also you have access to Roost, so you can be able to heal up, so that's really nice. So Empoleon is built for the story mode. The only reason why it's 3rd place and not 1st really does come down to the fact that Empoleon's ability is hidden. But if it wasn't hidden, it would easily take that number 1 spot, because even though Wigglytuff does have a diversified moveset, I mean, you cannot compete with that steel typing. That steel typing is really good. Mina, do you have any responses to say about our rankings here for Wigglytuff, Gothitelle, or Empoleon?
I'm super excited that Wigglytuff made it to number 1. So everyone needs to go out and catch a whole bunch of Jigglypuffs, because not only are they adorable, but they evolve into Wigglytuff. Yay!
Alright, there we go. And with that, I think that pretty much concludes our segment. So, Madam Kamina, thank you so much for being a part of the Roy Rogers News Channel on this lovely ability video.
Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. Alright, and this is the Roy Rogers News Channel. Don't forget to comment and subscribe to the channel like the content that you see here. And this is the Roy Rogers News Channel signing off. Fast, accurate, unbiased, Roy Rogers News.